The word Longhouse is now part of the right-wing lexicon. It was popularized by Bap's book, Bronze Age Mindset, but has since taken on a life of its own. Today, it's generally used as a synonym for feminism, but I think that's an inaccurate way to use the term. I mean, why not just say feminism? In this video, I'll try and clarify what the Longhouse really is, or at the very least, share my interpretation of it. Lewis Henry Morgan was an American anthropologist. He studied American Indians and spent part of his life among the Iroquois. He observed that Indian families would live in a joint tenement building called a longhouse. 5, 10, or even 20 Indian families would live in this building. There was no concept of private property or land ownership among them. Property was the possession of the community rather than the individual or family. To quote him, each household practiced communism in living. Whatever was gained by any member of the household on hunting or fishing expeditions or was raised by cultivation was made a common stock. Within the house, they lived from common stores. The longhouse was supervised by a matron who was responsible for distributing the provisions. To quote Morgan once again, every household was organized under a matron who supervised its domestic economy. After the single daily meal was cooked, the matron was summoned, and it was her duty to divide the food from the kettle to the several families according to their respective needs. Morgan describes Indian society as a gynocracy because it was matrilineal and matrilocal. In other words, descent was traced through the mother, and men lived with their wife's family after marriage. In 1877, Morgan published his most influential work, titled Ancient Society, Researches in the Lines of Human Progress from Savagery through Barbarism to Civilization. In this work, Morgan applied Darwin's theory of evolution to the study of history. Just as man had evolved from ape, society had evolved through 7 stages of development. Morgan believed that mankind developed in stages, and each stage was an advance on the previous stage. Societies in the early stages of development are polygamous, collectivist, and matriarchal, while later stages are monogamous, individualistic, and patriarchal. Morgan argues that gynocracy wasn't unique to the tribes of North America. Instead, he believed that it was a stage of societal evolution that all people went through. He believed that gynocratic, primitive communism had a wide prevalence in the tribes of mankind: Asiatic, European, African, American, and Australian. Not until after civilization had begun among the Greeks was the influence of this old order of society overthrown. More interestingly, for our purposes, Morgan predicts that one day an 8th stage of development would be reached. This 8th stage would combine the benefits of civilization with some of the virtues of savage society, such as gynocracy and communal ownership. This idea had an immense influence on both Marx and Engels, who incorporated it into the socialist view of human history. Morgan also created a secret fraternal society called the Order of the Iroquois. They would meet in a Masonic lodge, perform a secret rite, and laugh as Native Americans. But that is a story for another day. The term longhouse could be viewed as a shorthand for Morgan's 8th stage of development. In other words, a society that is technologically sophisticated yet retains primitive values, what we might call a neo-traditionalist society or a gynocracy with modernist characteristics. Hence, Bap writes, "The modern is nothing new. It is the return of a very ancient subjection and brokenness under new branding, promoted by new concepts and justifications. If you want to see our future, look to Europe as it existed before 1600 BC, or much of the world as it was until recently and still is. The communal life of the longhouse, with its young men dominated and broken by the old and sclerotic, by the matriarchs, the blob and yeast mode in human life, overtaking and subjecting all higher aspiration." Nietzsche made the same point in Genealogy of Morality when he wrote, "Modern democracy, the even more modern anarchism, and indeed that predilection for the commune, the most primitive form of social structure which is common to all Europe's socialists, are, in essence, a huge throwback. Socialism, communism, feminism, democracy, all of these so-called modern ideas are, in fact, a throwback. Far from being progressive, they are regressive, a regression to the collectivism and egalitarianism of our tribal past. This regression is disguised by contemporary rhetoric and modern technology, But behind the contemporary rhetoric, there is a reactionary impulse.